Uh, uh. Oh no. It's gonna be one of those days.
This is Hillary Goldstein for IGN Xbox, here with a video review of Conker Live and Reloaded. Conker Live and Reloaded is a remake of an N64 game, one of the last N64 games from Rare. It's about 5.5 years old now, and the single player actually is composed completely of the old game. There's one or two little fun touches that were added in there, but it's essentially a straight up port. It's just that they've taken the graphics and really put a polish on it in a way that you've never really seen in another Xbox game. This game, by far, is probably the prettiest Xbox game you'll ever see. You can forget about Halo 2, you can forget about Panzer Dragoon Orta. You know, there are maybe a couple instances where some of the character models aren't all that great, but overall, just from the environments and the effects and everything, this is almost what you would want to see in a low-end, like, next-generation graphics. Like, it's really that good. They've really maximized the system. But as for the single player, you play Conker, who's a rather obnoxious squirrel who wakes up after a bender, and he basically just needs to get home. And that's his whole story, is that he's just trying to get home, and in the process he runs into a variety of sort of lewd and strange characters. Conker is a hard game to describe, only in that it really jumps around from a lot of different genres. So, you know, you have platforming elements, you have some puzzle-solving elements, you'll even have some kart racing elements, there's combat, there's third-person shooting. It really mixes in a lot of genres and sort of jumps around. And when the game was first made 5 years ago, no one had really done that before. Now we've kind of seen it with a lot of other games have done that in this generation, but at the time it was a real marvel. I guess the only real problem now is that it comes out now, it almost seems like, well, I almost expect that from a game, that it's going to have a lot of different elements to it. The great thing about the Conker single player is that you never really know what you're going to get out of it. It's sort of constantly unexpected. You're going to be rolling up balls of poo up dunghills. You're going to be fighting a giant poo monster throwing toilet paper at him, and he's going to be singing a sort of a Disney parody at you. You just never know where it's going to take you next, and even the ending has like sort of this really cool Bugs Bunny ending to it that you're just not going to see coming. So the single player is kind of very refreshing if you've never played it before. However, if you've played the N64 version, I think you'll actually be disappointed in what they've done. They've tried to streamline the game a little bit to make it faster because they wanted to focus on the multiplayer. So they've made certain parts easier, and they've cut out some elements. Like, if you've played the game from the N64 version, you might remember there's a part where you dive into the water and you have to basically get this electric eel to chase you around, and you swim through these rings, and it was a pretty annoying part, but rather than fix that and the controls of the swimming, they just cut it out altogether. Which basically makes it easier, but it's also sort of a cheat. You know, you have 5 years to remake the game. Why not improve the things that were wrong with it instead of just tossing them out? As for the multiplayer, that's really Rare's big push, which is then surprising that the multiplayer really isn't that great. It's not so much that it's bad, it's just, it's not that much fun. A lot of thought went into it. It's a class-based multiplayer, so there's two different settings. There's the old war and the new war, and they're kind of spoofs on movies. And you can pick from one of 6 different classes, and there's basically 2 teams. There's the Teddies, and then there's sort of the furry nice guys, the SHC they're called. And you can either play in deathmatch mode, or you can play in objective-based missions, and it feels a lot like Return to Castle Wolfenstein, except not fun. And a lot of that lack of fun comes from the fact that the pacing's really slow in some areas in the multiplayer, but the game feels like it's supposed to be a twitch shooter, and it's really not, and it kind of gets confusing at times. Pretty much everybody who's played has said the same thing, that right off the bat they just sort of didn't know what the hell was going on, and it takes some time to get accustomed to it. And once you do, you can really get a hang of the game, but what happens is that the balancing is really off in the game. So the biggest problem is that one of the classes, the demolition guys, they have bazookas. Bazookas are pretty much one-shot kill. You don't even have to have great aim with it. Just about every other weapon, you know, you've really got to go toe-to-toe with somebody to take them out. But any guy gets a bazooka, and this is a class you can select, so you can always have the bazooka, they can just wipe everybody out. And we saw it in many games of this, that basically the guy with the bazooka can beat the crap out of everybody else, which is really just unfair. The maps are pretty decent. They're all inspired by different parts of the original game or from sci-fi movies. So there's like a little aliens stuff kind of mixed in, some Terminator stuff put in there. And one thing that's cool is that they've actually put cutscenes into the game, into the multiplayer, so that like if you win in a multiplayer area, you'll actually get like a cutscene reward, like telling part of a story, which is kind of good. It's just too bad that you're not going to really enjoy the experience all that much while you're getting to it. So a very smart idea, very well designed, very well put together, except for the balancing and really just sort of optimizing the ability to make it enjoyable and to make it fun for people. But overall, it's still funny. It's still fun to play. You know, it's about a 10-hour experience. Certainly, if you haven't played it before, it's a game that you should at least try out, just to see if it's your type. It's kind of more in the mold of British humor, so if you don't like Faulty Towers and Monty Python, you're probably going to be sitting there just staring at stuff going like, what the hell am I doing? But if that's the kind of humor that you like, then you're really going to laugh your ass off. But again, if you've played the N64 version, you might actually want to avoid picking up Conker for Xbox. So Conker Live and Reloaded, the single player is a little bit better than the multiplayer is, which is a little bit disappointing. But overall, it's still a fun game, still a good game, just not a great game.